Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here on time. Yeah, just as usual, we're going to start with just introductions of any new people that are joining us this morning. Let's see, who do we have here? Megan, Ken Zambos. Ken, you want to say hi?
Yes, thank you, Steve. Good morning. My name is Ken Zambos. I'm the program manager for workforce and economic development with the Pima County Public Library.
Great. And the Pima County Library is getting very involved in doing some broadband planning down here in Tucson, or I should say Pima County. Who else do we have that's new that hasn't been here before? Anybody? Andy Sinclair? Andy, are you there? Okay. Okay, well, let's just jump into the meeting. Give me about 2 minutes to share my screen and then we'll carry on with the agenda. Share the screen, there we go. Oops, give me a minute. Okay. That, let's get here, share this. I think this is it. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to another of our Breakfast Club meetings, or pajama party as we call it. Glad to see you all here this morning. So I want to cover a couple of quick things real quickly before we get into the actual presentations. So I have mentioned to you many times that we do have, I've been trying to publish every week a newsletter with updates of things that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there's probably other things that I'm not aware of. But I strongly encourage you, if you haven't been, to check out the webpage because we don't have time to cover everything at the meetings. But we do have announcements of new programs like the NTIA $288 million broadband infrastructure grants, which I'm assuming Jeff or others may also talk about. But you know, we have things like that, grants webinars that are coming up, new legislation, the Khajiit Digital Inclusion Grants, Utility Commissioner's Broadband Task Force recommendations that they've drafted, Department of Education allocations, Lighting Up the Future events, the $7.17 billion emergency connectivity fund, which of course you've already heard some about, and workshops that are coming up. So I just, again, encourage you, if you haven't been, to check out the newsletter. Otherwise you'll miss out on events and activities and things like that. So just wanted a reminder. Okay, so the next thing is just quickly, okay, what happened to my page here? There we go. Thanks to Oris, he suggested that that I know people have been looking for the contacts. And so what we've done now, while there's a notice, the link here to the task force participant list, that I have now put a link here with, I don't know what's going on today. So now the list is available and you can see the whole list. If you scroll, if you use your keys, you can scroll right and left, up and down, and you'll see all the information with the contact information. Now, this list is only those people who have actually gone to our Google form, filled out the form, and and provided their contact information. So we have other people who are on our email list. They haven't responded, so they're not in this list. But I think you'll find certainly those people have been participating regularly. So hopefully this is easier. And if you're looking to contact people, that you can now find them a little more easily. So, oops, what's the deal here? So going back to our agenda, so I wanted to point that out to you. Again, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of things, so just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Meeting schedule, no meeting next week on the 31st for Memorial Day, so you guys all have a good holiday. Next meeting is June 7, 14, 21, and 28. Again, if you haven't filled out our Google form, please do that. We're going to have a presentation shortly from Stephen Peterson with Siago, who's the Economic Recovery Coordinator with the Southeastern Arizona Government's Organization. He did a quick update at a workshop that Jeff hosted, and he'll be talking about that, I'm sure, in just a little while. Our federal and state updates are coming up. So with that, I'm going to just jump into getting our updates. This is actually outdated. Let's get that updated here. There we go. There we go. Just to mention, and this is also in the newsletter, Karen, are you here from Khajiit? Anybody from Khajiit online? Well, as you know, Khajiit is one of our sponsors, and they have a digital inclusion grant. And again, this is in the newsletter and on their website. But the deadline to submit is June the 4th. Grant winners will receive a pilot program with the Khajiit digital equity solution of their choice. Wi-Fi hotspots, bus Wi-Fi, our building Wi-Fi. Each pilot program includes hardware, a year of data on their network of choice, and access to their device and data management portal. So if you weren't aware of that, you should check out our newsletter and you'll find more information about that. Next thing is, Mark, this is really for you and I to talk about, but you may recall that we had a presentation from Kimber Lanning with the local First Arizona Economic Recovery Center. And I want to follow up with her, Mark, again, maybe you and I can do this, to talk about one, making sure that that the consultant directory, of course, Mark, that you developed is available so that they actually have people who are knowledgeable and experienced in broadband and digital access planning that's available. So want to talk with her about that. So Mark, maybe you and I can talk offline about that.
Sure. She has the directory and she's built her own cadre. So there's 60 some odd parties there, you know, but right. I think there's a deeper conversation to have about how we advance that partnership and get them, you know, broadband focused and engaged with our stakeholders.
Yeah, I want to also talk to her about how do we get some kind of a particular focus on broadband besides the consultants, about all the different funding sources that are coming down. So I want to get together with you and talk about that.
Great.
And so with that, let's just jump into our updates. Jeff, you want to kick it off, please?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. As Steve had mentioned, with our webinars coming up next month, the first one is on June 2nd. That's the general session that we've all had. On June 9th, we're having a tribes only session. So if you work directly with tribes and have good access lists of folks that you think would be important, please let's talk, and we'll make sure they get a personal invitation to attend. You know, it's not just the information you get on the webinars, it's the connections you make and the things you hear. You know, Stephen from SEGO, who will be speaking later today, is a great example. Took the initiative to put together a really interesting map program that I think is actually very applicable to many other areas. So please do attend if you can. We hope you can. Steve had mentioned earlier the NTIA $288 million infrastructure grant program. NTIA is our co-sponsor on the webinar. Scott Woods, you may have seen Scott on the webinar. Scott is the guy who's in charge of that grant. I can't stress enough how important it is to make those connections and understand. Just a really quick overview on the grant. The dollar amount are between $5 and $30 million. My experience with these are $288 million over 50 states and territories. It's probably going to be closer to 5. The due date is in August, so this is really quick. The interesting thing is they're looking for the state or a political subdivision of the state and a provider. So you got to pick a partner. We've talked about that before. 10% match is good. I mean, again, we could go down the list. What we're trying to do at the state level is trying to find a project that we in the state can get behind. We're actually talking to all our providers, so those who are on the call as well. If you are interested in working with the state, this is something that we're going to ask for a proposal by June 18th and something that we can get behind. There's a lot of opportunities. I mean, we'll certainly support everyone, but you know, I feel like we have a unique relationship with NTIA on this one, and we want to find something that's kind of special. Great opportunity for the state. I think we will get a project. The question is how big and where. And again, we want to make sure we get the best possible application forward. So if you have something in your pipeline, if you're a carrier, if you're a community, let's definitely talk and see if it fits the criteria of the grant. One of the downsides of the grant, it's kind of important, is that if your area has received RDOF funding, that is a big negative on the grant. So unfortunately, we have some very large swaths of the state that receive this funding that may bump them out of consideration. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be super busy with traveling out to Yuma and Payson next week. Will be an interesting travel schedule. Among other things, the Navajo Summit this week. So if I don't get back to you right away, I apologize. We're getting back to the normal travel and getting out and about. So if you have anything important going on in your communities, you feel like it's important for me to attend, please let me know ahead of time, and I'll do my best to attend and let you know what's going on in the state. That's really all I had today, Steve. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, if not, moving on. Mala, are you online?
Steve, I just wanted to say I posted in the chat. Benton had as they always do, a great summary of the NTIA program. So I put the link for the Benton summary as well as the actual grant.gov landing page for the NTIA grant program, where you can download the PDFs of the longer formal versions of the coverage.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
This is
yeah, go ahead.
Holly.
Yeah, Holly.
Malo is not able to be with us this morning, and I checked in with her last night. The main thing we have to share is just that we're continuing to spread the word about EBB. Last week, there was a meeting of the Maricopa County Library Council, which is the directors of the libraries in Maricopa County and the cities within the county. And so Mala spoke with them and shared the resources that are available for libraries and encouraged them to please help get the word out and to help support staff in helping the public with applications. And then she said that she also worked with Gentech to promote EBB at the grassroots. So
Great.
That's what we have for today.
Good, thank you, Holly. Any questions for Holly?
Hey, Steve, Kirk Bush. And Jeff, I apologize. I meant to ask you, but I couldn't get my unmute done fast enough. I don't know if Jeff's still there. If you could just give us a little overview real quick, and maybe Mark can chime in here too, a little bit on how the ASU position is going to be in leadership and trying to help us in the entire state, and how it's going to work with your group on their lighting of the future agenda. Can you give us 2 minutes there?
You know, that's a different project. I'm not involved with that project.
Okay.
That's a university project. So you'd have to ask them.
Well,
Okay.
actually, excuse me, Derek's on the call later, and so he can maybe speak to that a little bit.
Okay. Sorry, Jeff. Thanks.
If I can put you on the spot in just a little while, Derek, about that. There we go. Let's get back to this. Okay, So let's see, who else do we need to hear from today? Janet, are you online? Don't think so. I know she has conflicting meetings often on Mondays. Jeff, do you have anything that you want to report regarding telemedicine?
Yeah, Steve, I mean, the one thing that again, coming out of some of our meetings is working not just with Janet and the U of A telemedicine program, but working with Kimber and Local First and the League of Cities and Towns to really start sort of hyper targeting some of the folks that have the potential for telemedicine through our Medicaid program and helping them to get the connectivity. This is a really promising program because each one of the folks involved here brings something really unique to the table. The Local First people have some great relationships, Kimber as well, and the League of Cities and Towns. And so we're excited about this program. We just kicked it off about a week ago. And we feel like that this is going to be a real signature telemedicine program for the state.
Can you talk a little bit more, Jeff, about that, what that looks like?
You know what, we're really early in the process, Steve, so I don't want to get too far down the path, but really it's focused around targeting Arizonans that are on the Medicaid list, making sure that we apply for grants in the right areas. You know, there are a lot of great ideas out there, but we have to be realistic about the stuff that we can get and we can implement. And in many cases, we've applied for grants or, backed organizations that applied for grants that quite frankly, it wasn't physically feasible. This is quite the opposite. This is looking and finding out where are the best areas and then trying to find grants that fit those areas. So we have the best possibility of success in terms of pulling down telemedicine grants, whether it's from the USDA or many of the other organizations that provide grants for that specific purpose.
Cool. Okay, any more questions for Jeff? If not, Sophia, are you online?
I am.
And I don't know, are you online too or not? Doesn't sound like it. Go ahead, please, Sophia.
Yeah, so really my updates are very similar to last week. Our campaign, Ready for School campaign should be launching soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. We just want to re-engage any students who maybe were unengaged from their school due to the pandemic. So keep an eye out for that. Any support, if you feel you want to do that, would be definitely appreciated. Secondly, Mylan and I are meeting after this meeting to finalize some of our messaging for schools around the new E-rate rules, and I will definitely make sure to share anything relevant with this group next time we meet.
Okay. Any questions for Sophia?
When you talk about E-rate rules, Sophia, do you mean something to do with the ECF, Emergency Connectivity Fund, or is that what you
Yes,
mean?
that is what I mean. I'm still trying to like glue that acronym into my brain, but yes, that is what I mean.
And so I'm sorry, just FYI, I've had conversations with Mala about presenting more details about that program. And she said, let's wait until we were going to do it today. And she said, well, they're still finalizing the rules. So let's kind of wait until probably, well, it won't be next week because we won't be meeting next week, but we will get into more detail about that program.
I have a question, Sophia.
Go ahead.
Do you know if Mylan or if you are going to put anything out to the schools in writing? Or is it just a discussion point you plan on bringing up at our next meeting here?
Oh no, we're planning to send an email to schools.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I apologize if that wasn't clear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Leah, are you online? Doesn't look like it. Derek, I know you're online. I'm sure I saw you. What's the latest?
Yeah, I'm here, Steve. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. I'm driving, so I'm not on video. But yeah, I don't have. I would say a lot of updates today over last week, and I suppose I can try to hit on Kirk's question regarding. I think you were asking about how does Lighting Up the Future as an initiative or set of initiatives interact or blend with this group?
job reframing my question.
Okay. So I think the general idea is to be complementary, right? And to recognize that this is a problem that plagues, every Arizona, or every Arizonan. And so it's going to require a village, and they're the folks engaged in leading that initiative are bringing their contacts, their Rolodexes, their ability to convene and host discussions to bear in a way that is meant to be complementary to all of the other efforts in the state, including this one. We've had a good conversation with Dom Papa, that's Steve and Mark and I, about acknowledging each other's efforts and the value therein. I'll just say I didn't hear as much as I was hoping to hear of that acknowledgement on the kickoff event. So hopefully over time it will begin to emerge, that there's parallel and synergistic efforts to bring people together to talk about the challenges and bring ideas to bear and build coalitions. That's what I can say. That's how I'm feeling about the two initiatives.
And Derek, this is Mark. And so also that's a group that's undertaking specific projects, proof of concept and other projects. For example, they're lighting up eight trailers in a trailer park near a specific, I don't know if it's a high school or junior high.
It's Moya. Moya Elementary School in
elementary
Isaac
school.
District.
So they're cherry picking some small projects to try out technology and do some proof of concept work, and maybe larger projects as they go along. There were a couple, that elementary school and a couple of others I heard that were actually physical projects that they were doing. So there'll be a policy partner, there'll be hosting a series of regional listening sessions, I believe they're calling them. And Steve, we should certainly help publicize those listening sessions.
Those are on our newsletter page. So I encourage you again to check it out. Okay.
Thank you, Derek.
You're right, Mark. There are hard projects that they've taken on, that they've funded out of ASU. And we're actually right in the middle of engineering a solution. It's why I'm on the road to expand the Moya pilot to a couple of other schools in the Isaac District, and maybe 100 households or so.
So again, we'll continue to have discussions with the leadership of that effort. And of course, Derek is involved in both of those. And so we'll continue to have discussions about how we best communicate and collaborate. I did appreciate that at the end of the meeting that they had, that they did acknowledge the task force. Not as much as I would have liked to have seen, but they did do that, and we appreciate that. So any questions or comments for Derek before we move on? So moving on to our resource presentation, and Jeff commented that at his webinar recently that we heard from Stephen Peterson, who is the Economic Recovery Coordinator with Southeastern Arizona Governments Organization, and really a pretty awesome data tool. And so I thought it would be really interesting. I know I've been talking with some folks down here in Pima County about getting some initiatives going, and I know this is an issue that comes up all the time. So with that, Stephen is going to talk to us this morning about the GIS mapping tool that they used for development and planning of the region's broadband expansion efforts. So with that, Stephen, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let you share and talk, please.
Sounds great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So as Steve mentioned, I am the Economic Recovery Coordinator for the Sego region. Overall, we cover 4 counties: Cochise, Graham, Greenlee, and Santa Cruz. And as part of our broadband efforts and through our investigation of a broadband expansion effort that occurred back starting, let's say 2010, but really took off 2013, 2014, there was some mapping done of the region's assets to help with the planning effort. So we wanted to recreate that with, more modern ideas of where GIS has gone. And so I'll just briefly go through some of the assets that we mapped and how that might even contribute to your planning efforts around EBB. So let me just kind of pull up my layers here. So what we started to do was map out major anchor institutions, correctional facilities, medical facilities, libraries, law enforcement, fire, education. And then we added transmission lines and rights of ways insofar as those were accessible. These are elements that are very important when it comes to planning your overall infrastructure network, especially rights of way when you start to figure out where you might think you want your broadband network to be built. These rights of ways and even transmission lines are going to come into play. We also added a few other layers here, such as irrigation districts. I'm sure, as you know, in Arizona, there really aren't too many, but that was good to get in there, as well as opportunity zones. There's a lot of funding towards opportunity zones, and we think that this is a potential growth area for the future. And what we did was we took the American Community Survey data, the most recent data that outlined served and underserved and unserved populations, and put that into these layers. So I'm going to make an attempt here to zoom into Santa Cruz County so I can show you a little bit closer how this might work for you in terms of, again, your planning efforts. One more little zoom here. Okay, so take these red areas, for example. What our GIS analysts help us do was to categorize based on percentage of these unserved and underserved populations. So it gives you the census tract number here, a rough number of total households, 603, some of households with a computer. And as you scroll down here, you'll see some of no internet, about 125, and some of no computer. So why we thought that this was important, especially when it comes to programs like the EBB, is we wanted to establish objectives and key results. So if we know roughly the number of people who currently have no internet or no computer whatsoever, we can start to establish a metric that we want to attempt to reduce. So, an idea would be to reduce the sum of households with no internet and no computer, let's say by 20%, a number that we could tackle. So you would take the overall number, figure out what that 20% looks like, and start to map out what is a boots on the ground strategy to get devices and connectivity within the households of each of these census tracts. So even though most of us have a kind of middle mile plan of infrastructure expansion over time, we also want to address the low hanging fruit, which this emergency broadband benefit program can do. And that's part of why mapping out the anchor institutions was so important, because collaborating with those anchor institutions that are in these different tracks will help you to coordinate your boots on the ground effort to get people engaged, get an action-oriented plan out there to start to educate the population of those census tracts and get them the right information so that they can apply towards these programs. As much as what we're doing on social media and email blasting and all of those things are effective, marketing and sales in general, even though we're not, quote unquote, selling a product, but it's based on multiple touches. And so we realized, there's probably a decent size of the population that might be skeptical, especially if you don't live directly in the area and you're trying to coordinate a remote effort. Having someone who's local to actually facilitate program promotion, I think, is very important. Someone that the community knows and recognizes. So as you'll see here, there's a fire department right up here. That's probably a great place to start to coordinate an effort like the EBB to get distribution out to neighborhoods, out to these households, so that you can start to implement this kind of program like the EBB. And so these were some of the major things that we were considering when we put this together. And let me see what else I can pull up here. You'll see transmission lines going straight through these tracks here, of course. One of the other things that was really helpful to us is comparing our tool with the i3 Connect tool that is often demonstrated in the NTIA and ACA workshops, because what that was doing was showing us what providers were in the area. So if you're unsure what providers are in the area, that tool will help you identify, and when you look at the ACS data, and you also compare it to the list of providers that the EBB has put out there, you can recognize right away whether or not it's going to be feasible to target an area because of the provider list. Even though there might be a need, if you realize none of the major providers that are currently in this particular area show up on the EBB list, you have to start thinking outside the box. Okay, what can we do to really, bring folks internet connectivity? So you see, you can just go through these various census tracts, zoom in very closely, get a sense of what anchor institutions out there, and start to plan your overall outreach program, and take the estimated sum of no internet and sum of no computer, and start to figure out how you're going to implement and add devices. One of the things that we're also considering doing is raffling. Especially around equipment donations. If you find folks who are ready and able and willing to donate equipment, if you create some kind of raffle program, you create an incentive for people to at least get signed up, whether they put their application in or just based on getting information so they become educated about the importance of broadband and why they should consider putting their application for the EBB. I think that this serves well. And we also realized in trying to, join forces with some of the folks who are even on this call who have been, great assets at putting together the materials to promote the EBB program, is people need a place they can go. And again, that's why having these anchor institutions is so important, is someone, is going to have to facilitate where can people go to upload their documents, get access to a computer so that they can apply, even if they decide to call a navigator over the phone that might be, somewhere further up north. They'd have someone there, a place that they could go to finish and complete the overall application. One last thing that we intend to add to this mapping tool are places of worship. We know a lot of them have closed down because of COVID, and I don't think that there's a lot of that information out there on different articles. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of different things, but the fact that some churches, some places of worship are not reopening, I think is cause for concern, because that's a place that, these are places that a lot of people who are in need go to. And so we consider these to be extremely important as we coordinate our outreach and figure out how we can get in touch with people who need these kinds of programs for us to be able to assist. And finally, one last thing that we had been working on was a survey. It's a resiliency survey that we put together because part of my position is to implement a resiliency toolkit to figure out how to help our communities become more resilient. And we attached a resiliency survey to the speed test. So Ookla, I'm sure, is a name you've all been hearing recently. So we had our team over at NAU build us a survey with a speed test at the end of it And this is going to be data that we will also upload to our GIS tool going forward, because as much as the ACS data gives us a solid representation, some kind of approximation or estimate on who's in need, having that detailed information based on speed test data, we can leverage these tools as we coordinate with internet service providers. So again, we have an open communication. Nobody is trying to rebuild or reinforce broadband and fiber that's already there. It's more about how can we stretch it and expand it to these areas in need. And as we get boots on the ground to assess the data here, I think that gives us really a great opportunity to be effective in our planning efforts. One last thing, I definitely recommend getting a hold of ADOT's rights of way map that they recently released on one of the last ACA workshops. Because again, if you take these tools, what's important is how does the raw data coordinate to actionable data? What can we gain from the insights of this data to actually become and be effective planners in our efforts to expand broadband and close that digital divide? So those rights of way maps are going to be extremely important as we proceed to engage telecom consultants to help build our conceptual network and figure out within our 4-county region where our networks are going to be built. So hopefully this has been helpful. I put together an email for someone recently and just kind of walked them through the process of how we pulled some of this data, what we asked our GIS analysts to do. And yeah, I think that's a pretty solid overview. So if anybody has any questions, I'm open to answering them.
Stephen, can I just ask a couple of things and then we'll open it up to other people? When you
Yeah.
say we, so are you driving all of this, or is there someone else within your areas here, or who's kind of taking the lead on putting all this? Is that you?
Yes, so I have been tasked to kind of lead, the broadband expansion effort. Of course, my job ultimately is to connect with the champions within our counties, CIO departments, technical departments, education, anybody who's really thinking hard about how do we improve broadband connectivity for our region. So we've, put together a kind of subcommittee, a lot like this, where we're trying to create a coalition of people who are committed to this and championing these efforts in their various areas. But as far as my organization within Seago, yes, I have been tasked to kind of lead the charge on this.
So a related question. So there's another county that's looking at doing some planning and was looking for a template for consultants. And if you or anybody else who's on the call can share that, would be greatly appreciated. So with that, let me open it up to questions or comments from others.
Yeah, this is Mark. Stephen, good job. I'm glad to see that you are taking community anchor institutions into account in the way you are. To me, that's the great missing piece in the FCC and the national mapping. When we did the AZBAP program here, 2010 to 2014, I had a guy spend 2 years creating and maintaining a spreadsheet on 10,400 Arizona community anchor institutions in 7 categories. And if you don't have that spreadsheet, I'd be glad to provide it. You might still find that it tickles up some CAIs that you don't have, though obviously a little dated. I'll get your email from the minutes later today or put it in the chat. But we really did spend a lot of time looking at the proximity of schools and healthcare and other things to the broadband gaps. And that's a big deficit in the national mapping. They collected that data from us up till 2014, but they themselves never mapped it. On our state mapping portal we did. So cred for, bringing the CAIs into your equation and the way I see you doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments for Stephen? So I want to say one thing that, again, Jeff mentioned the broadband workshops that he's been working with regarding with NTIA. And again, I strongly encourage you all to participate. He's provided some great information about planning and resources and so forth. And so if you haven't been attending those workshops, again, strongly encourage you. And you'll find the information again in our newsletter. So I don't know, Jeff, if you want to say anything more about that than you already have.
No, I just think that not only is the information presented, but trying to understand, not just the NTIA, but the EDA and the USDA are our co-sponsors. Between the three of them, I think they have about $2 billion to give away this year. I think it's important just to understand how they look at this, what their process is. We've had a lot of grants in the past, applications where people just, they applied in the wrong organizational structure, and understanding how they do this is great. Also, and I think that Stephen's a great example of this, is that we have folks that just literally surge forward on these things with great ideas that can be used in other parts of the state. And I truly appreciate that. And it's a great networking opportunity to understand what other areas are doing, particularly the breakout sessions they have like a week or so after, where people talk about specific projects. We had a really deep dive on Lake Havasu City in terms of data on ours earlier today, and just understanding what that process looks like. So we appreciate it if you can attend. I think that it will help your community, your organization. And we appreciate all the support that Steve and Mark and the folks from the AZBSN and NTIA have given. You guys were on every single breakout session, which is fantastic. So thank you.
Right. So just quickly, Paul, you made a comment in the chat. I don't know if you want to, we don't have a lot of time, but you want to just talk about, you sort of commented that it's kind of similar to what you're doing. And so maybe you want to just talk briefly about that.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, the mapping work is incredibly important. We did a lot of that mapping work probably about 6-8 months ago now.
Paul, excuse me 1 second. Just tell people quickly who you are and where you're working.
Yeah, sure. Paul Ross, I'm the Associate Vice President CIO at Phoenix College. So yeah, we did a lot of that mapping work about 6 to 8 months ago across Phoenix and Maricopa County, and brought in a lot of assets to identify city assets, school assets, and did a lot of measuring. So for instance, we've done GPS calculations between the actual physical locations of students and resources. And when you start looking at that sort of depth, then you get a whole nother picture. But with the ACS data as well, because they updated the ACS data on December 10th with their latest release. But the mapping work, it cannot be underestimated. It is actually a very critical part of everything. And once you dig into it, it's a rabbit hole that you do have to follow, because that's where you really start to find the fabulous information and start to glean models and everything. And I can talk about this particular thing for hours, because our data model has like 27 layers of data. So Stephen, I'm right there with you. I understand what you're doing. You've got a few pieces that we don't, but I really feel like that this is the right direction with the GIS mapping, and then with the use cases and the proof of concepts and the different technologies. When you overlay everything, it is actually possible for us to make this work across all of Arizona.
So Jeff, I'm just sitting here thinking, and maybe you and I can talk some more offline, but in addition to the workshops that you've been sponsoring with NTIA, maybe we need to have another workshop with just people like Paul and Stephen and a few other people, where we can get into a little more depth and more interaction regarding this issue.
Around mapping, yeah, that's actually an interesting idea. There are people who know a lot more about GIS than I ever will, and our state land department in particular is very good with that tool. And I'd love to host something. So maybe that's something we can do as a joint webinar.
Yeah.
One thing Stephen mentioned on the thing I think is important to realize too. I believe he was talking about EBB, and local involvement. And one of the things I found that folks in particularly in rural Arizona is they don't necessarily want us here in Phoenix to dictate to them, to tell them what to do specifically, and they need to have input. And one of the things that I personally believe in, as we talk to these carriers, and as I mentioned, we're going to Yuma and Payson and all around the state, we have some really interesting carriers that are coming in to look at these markets, Havasu and Kingman, and I could go on and on. But making sure that they have local involvement, making sure that they hire local and they have a local presence in these markets, because, you know, without that, I think a lot of the problems we have right now, quite frankly, are we have folks that are so far removed from the end user that there really isn't a connection there. There isn't a local office. You know, I can't tell you how many times people have said, I'd like to be able just to knock on the door and talk to someone, or talk to a live human being. And so I believe that's important and something that we're working towards as well. You know, in talking with, you know, specifically Nicole in the state library and others, they've done a great job at a statewide level, but I think we need to really focus on driving that local, and mapping is a big part of that, helping people understand what they have. You know, the engagement rates, folks that have the ability to get broadband but do not choose to do it, is a real problem. And that's something that we really need to focus on as well. So like I said, Stephen, that was a great presentation. And just like we said last week on our call, much appreciated.
So, Stephen, you mentioned faith-based programs, which is a great segue to Tracy. You want to talk about the Scottsdale Baptist Church initiative, which you were very instrumental with. And so it's pretty awesome. Great example of what people can do. So Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. And it was really Scottsdale Bible Church, not Scottsdale Baptist Church, which is totally cool. But
Tracy, can you just tell people who you are, please?
Sure. I'm Tracy Beal, the Executive Director of School Connect, and we're a nonprofit that helps schools build a village of support around them. And so Steve saw an interview, I think on KTAR, or heard a KTAR interview about how Scottsdale Bible Church had actually worked with School Connect. And I wanted to tell you behind the scenes that my opportunity to be a part of AZBSN has been really critical to me understanding the incredible work that is happening with infrastructure that all of you are working on, but that we've also been looking for gaps. Where are those gaps? So I know Sharika and United Way and Elena from Common Sense, we're nonprofits who are looking for ways that we can bring value and fill in gaps where those gaps exist. And so I was able to work with Jeff Sabatka and the County Superintendent's Office. I was also on the Mayor's Youth and Education Commission. So I found out from Tim Valencia that there was a need in the city of Phoenix in school districts for, well, it turns out like about 12,600 computers that local school districts did not have. And so the city of Phoenix had some CARES Act money, but not enough to help with those schools. And so I have a great relationship with Scottsdale Bible Church and had cast the vision of the digital divide to them. And they said, we will raise money. So they made the goal of raising $1 million. This was in December of 2020. And instead they raised 1.5 million. And then we had the opportunity to work directly with the manufacturer. So we were able to get laptops for $190 a piece to make that money spread, to be able to buy that many computers. And we have given them out to City of Phoenix schools and some Maricopa County schools as well. And so it's been very, very, very exciting. I know we've talked before about the role of the faith community as an anchor institution. So they can raise money. They're great volunteers. They're really good at getting information out to the community that they are in. And so that's been a real privilege to get to do that. We've been engaging those communities as well with EBB. So all of those faith communities who have resource centers or food pantries or clothing closets. They're also getting the word out about EBB, which is such a powerful thing. And then I just wanted to say a quick shout out because Sharika Jackson was able to use funding from a grant to be able to buy computers with School Connect for more communities. Same thing has been happening. United Way gave School Connect a grant, and we were able to provide 250 computers to a charter school right before they had statewide testing. So they were able to do all of their statewide testing. So this group has been incredible in helping us actually kind of fill in gaps where those gaps are needed. And so I just wanted to, Steve asked me if I'd like to share, and I put in the chat the link both to a video that Scottsdale Bible did. This was in the Tolleson Elementary School District. You get to see kids and parents and teachers opening up computers, and then a link to the KTAR radio interview.
So I want to say a couple of things. First of all, again, the information about that program is in our newsletter. So if you haven't been there, go check it out. And there's a link to their webpage that has that video. And so, I want to just encourage you to, if you're looking to follow up with that information, that's the place to go. And secondly, Tracy and what she's been doing has just been phenomenal. And it's been our philosophy all along that we have a lot of great groups and organizations. We have never wanted to be in competition with what other people are doing, that there's people doing great stuff already. And we want to encourage them, hopefully help to build partnerships and so forth, and not duplicate or be in competition with some of the great work that people on this call are already doing. And Tracy's a perfect example of that. So good job, Tracy. Awesome.
Hey, Steve, I was just going to say, fantastic job, Tracy. I had the opportunity to live in Dallas for 10 years when I worked for AT&T. And, the Potter's House Church with TD Jakes did phenomenal work across a lot of areas. Prestonwood Baptist, just huge. And I love to see that our faith-based community get involved, because this is not a problem that can be solved by the state. This is not a problem that can be solved by anybody. We have to get involved in our local communities, and this is very encouraging. So thank you, Tracy.
I don't know, Linda Leatherman, are you on call by chance? She's not on the call. Okay. Okie doke. Well, awesome stuff going on. Again, I really encourage you to participate in Jeff's. And Jeff, that last webinar, I think I asked you, is that going to be, did you record that? And is that going to be available for us to?
They're all recorded and they're all posted, all the webinars.
So,
Steve, oops.
I'm
Steve,
sorry.
I am on. This is Linda Leatherman.
Oh, good. So
Yeah.
Linda, I was just thinking, because I know you're involved with the faith community quite a bit, that if you don't know Tracy, or you guys haven't connected, I think it's a great example for you to be able to work with.
Yes, that's an excellent example. I'm so glad that she spoke about how effective it's been. And that is exactly, Cindy and I have been working together. So we're going to be meeting with one of the city council members tomorrow, and one of the sort of the go-to people for the faith community on Tuesday. So we're working on that, and we do have some other things that we're doing. So it's very exciting to me to hear what the Phoenix Bible Church is doing and what Tracy's doing. Just great leadership.
So if you guys haven't connected, you probably should.
Yes, I will. Thanks, Steve.
And Linda, just tell people quickly who you are.
I'm Linda Leatherman. I'm the Pima County Faith-Based and Community Initiatives Coordinator. So I've been working with the faith groups for several years, and we have an excellent rapport with those faith groups. We haven't gotten to the point, they do, basically we're sort of working with the things that they're doing, the social services that they provide, and helping them to see how important that is to the community. So we've been, we haven't asked them to do what Tracy's doing, but School Connect is very, very active here in Tucson in working with groups. And so I think that's a wonderful connection for us. And thanks, Tracy, for bringing that up.
Okay. Any more questions for Tracy or Linda?
Oh, Steve, this is Mauricio. I'd just like to echo everything that has been said about Tracy. For those of you that don't know, this is only one of many initiatives that Tracy and School Connect has been involved over the years. So she's a really asset to the community. They used to, I mean, I don't know because of the COVID, but they used to have a yearly meeting where all the schools will get together at Grand Canyon University and fill up the whole gym. People from different school districts connecting with each other, talking to each other, making those connections that we're talking about. And then on top of that, as far as faith-based communities go, it's all about building trust. And who better trust they have in the community than your own faith-based, regardless of what faith you belong to, is those faith leaders that have trust in the community. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So thank you.
Thanks, Mauricio. So while we're talking about Tracy, many of you know that Tracy, along with Elena and Nicole and Cindy Hogan and Mala and others, have kind of have helped to facilitate an EBB initiative here for the state. And so Tracy, you want to give us a quick update on what's happening with that?
Sure, and I'm glad the rest of my team is on here. We're about to meet this hour right afterwards for another update, but I just got text messages from some of the team that we've been having several people test the application of EBB. They've been getting through. Sometimes it's taken them 35 or 40 minutes, but it's happening. I'm looking for the numbers for Arizona. Mala's trying to work on that, but I got an email about 1 million applications that have been successful nationally so far.
Wow.
So I think what we're doing is we're choosing to say, we're going to get as much information out to anchor institutions. We're going to train people. We're going to give them all the resources they need. And then hope that we get a lot of that money because we need it.
So thank you, Tracy. You and your team have done a lot of work to help get people here in Arizona signed up. So really appreciate all your work.
Elena did say we got media from Channel 10, KTAR, and NPR locally. So that was we've made some progress there.
Cool. Yeah, Elena, I believe you sent a press release to folks, if I'm not mistaken.
She did. She sent out that press release, and so we have had responses.
Great. So just a couple of quick things. So Marcelino, I think you were online. Do you want to just talk quickly about what we're doing down here in Pima County regarding EBB?
Thank you, Steve. Yes. So we have.
Excuse me, Marcelino, do you want to just tell people who you are, please?
Oh, Marcelino Flores, Special Staff of Community and Workforce Development. I work with Linda and others down here in Pima County to just help coordinate some of the services provided through the county. So the EBB effort, we've been working within different departments within the county. We have the library partnership in the lead. We're working with the health, faith-based and other communities, again, just to make sure that we tailor the message as best as possible to our audiences. You know, and Linda's been really helpful, again, like with the faith-based and adjusting the message a little bit. We also have frontline staff that have the toolkit, or at least the FAQs, so that they can begin to help people through the process. We're slowly but slowly seeing people come in. We want to take a moment as we get some examples of people helping others through different processes, different providers, and just kind of maybe get together and follow up with what lessons are learned and where we're seeing some issues and how we can address those. We're using our computer labs to obviously provide access for those that don't have the computers. We're beginning to run the videos from FCC in our waiting rooms. So we're just looking at it as an outreach campaign and making sure that we're covering the various media around. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have tailored radio spots and targeted maybe messaging for billboards But those are still things that are in process, and we're looking at it as a as I think what was mentioned earlier. Looking at what we can do and try and target our audiences. There was something, Steve, that maybe if I can share
Sure.
the spreadsheet real briefly.
You want me to start? You want to share something?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So one of the questions is how long is this program going to last? So with again the million available, or the million that signed up this past week, we have it here. So a million, so that equals $50 per month for that million people, for those million. So we have here, if we keep adding a million, this program is going to expire in about 10 months, is what it's estimating. So it's probably not going to be a million every week. It's probably going to go up. I'm estimating it'll go up to maybe 1,500, 2 million, and then it'll start dwindling down as time goes on. That's the usual more likely product cycle. But either way, the modeling is kind of, I'm curious to know how many we're getting in Arizona for one. And then overall, the more that sign up, the faster the program is going to go. So how fast we burn through that is going to be kind of a question that is on my mind, especially for figuring out what is a long-term solution. So the mapping, finding the stakeholders in the areas and looking at other funding sources, it just kind of lights a fire underneath those efforts, because this funding is not going to last. So I think, we had, this was kind of like our marketing, just, targeting a messaging out to about 50,000 people down here in the bottom. And we know that not everyone that gets the message actually engages. We're estimating about 10% would get engaged. And then, 25% of those would, so we're just looking at modestly impacting, 1% at this point of people that don't have internet, which would be 1% of about, and these are estimates again, about 33,000 in Pima County. So, we're trying to get about 1,200 people signed up, and hopefully we can begin tracking. I think like Steve had mentioned, Mala is trying to find out where the tracking is happening. We hope that we can have, partners share like what has been the traffic to the websites on the Arizona Connect or Connect Arizona. I always get them confused. What has been the traffic, the web traffic to the FCC site. We ourselves are tracking our Facebook, traffic, our emails, our newsletters. We have those numbers that we're also, again, just looking at. But at the end of the day, we still need to see how many people are signing up in our respective communities with our respective providers and are pleased with the services that they're getting. So hopefully we have a feedback system at some point. I think that's.
So, yeah, Cindy, I see. I'll get to you 1 second. So I want to just say a couple of quick things. One is that, first of all, Marcelino has really been driving this down here in Pima County, and really appreciate that. Secondly, is that, as you can see, that we're not just focused on the education space. Marcelino really comes from, we have several other people on this call who are in the workforce development space. And so I think that's, pretty exciting to see that we're really having a broader reach, even in the EBB program. And so I think that's really important to recognize that the needs are not just in the for education and for students, but a much broader reach. So I think that's really important. Cindy, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just, Marcelino, when you were sharing, you said 10 to 12 months and your chart said weeks. So which is correct?
So it's months. The iterations are in weeks. So, it's still 10 iterations, and the monthly payments, they would happen, it's still iterations. So it's not even weeks. It's right now we're gauging the subscriptions weekly. but the effect is monthly. So if
Okay.
that makes any sense, but it's still just an iteration of
Sure.
whatever, if we find out, yeah.
Great.
So as you all know, that the libraries have just been absolutely awesome with not only EBB, but all kinds of digital access. But Ken, Ken Zambos, if you're still online, if I can just put you on the spot for a moment, just to talk about how Pima County Library is getting involved with the EBB.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you. Well, Michelle Simon may have been in one of these meetings previously talking about some of the things that she was starting up. But over the last few weeks, what I've been focusing on is getting staff, specifically our adult service staff throughout the library system, kind of up to speed on EBB. The intent obviously is that, we have 27 locations. We're spread throughout the county. So as patrons or as people that are coming in that need to apply, we'll have somebody on hand that can actually give them some assistance. We currently have a limitation on the amount of time that an individual can be in the library, which is a confounding variable because, we've had some instances where it may take longer than an hour to help someone. So that 1 hour time limit, I think, is a temporary barrier we're trying to work around. And that's partly what Marcelino said about supplying information and toolkits and FAQs and things to staff so that when they do work with someone, it's not discovery from ground zero. It's this is what we need to do. We can knock this out. We've got scanners, we've got computers, we've got internet access for everyone in the community that can come in. They don't have to have a library card, as an example. They can just come in and get assistance. And so just trying to get staff up to speed on that. And then also working with our communications department. Our communications department within the library had created a flyer, and we printed thousands of those to be sent out to partners in the community, as well as displayed in all of our libraries. Our current capacity inside the libraries is restricted because of COVID, but on June 1st, I believe we're going to increase the number of individuals that can be in the building at one time. And what extrapolates from that in regard to EBB is we're going to have more foot traffic, more visibility. So flyers, posters, and things like that are going to be seen by more individuals. We're also working with our communications department for social media posts, our website, and so forth. And as Marcelino mentioned, we are also going to track the analytics from how many people click on an email or how many people follow something or like something from the different tools that we're using to kind of get the word out. So that's what we've been working on for the last couple of weeks.
Great, thanks, Ken. And Wes, are you online? Cindy, I don't know if you want to just take a couple of minutes. I know you've been working with Wes with the Rural Schools Association. You want to just take a minute to just talk about what you're working on with him?
Sure. So Wes put me together with someone out in Ajo, the
superintendent,
right? And I have not gotten a call back. I have a feeling end of school year was a little overwhelming, so I'll check back this week. I also wanted to say that I spent 4 hours at a public housing space in Tucson on Friday, signing people up. And so I was able to test kind of the existing training PDF that we had put out and also kind of update it. But it's like, as we talked about in our subcommittee last week, it's never gonna get perfect or easy. Everyone who showed up had a different circumstance, approached it a different way. There are bugs in the system, but it's not a one-step process. It's a two-step process. So all we're doing when we're working with someone initially is getting them into an application in for eligibility, and then they have to go to the provider and walk through those systems. The providers and each one has a different approach. So I think we talked quite a bit about how we were going to get people trained. I'm not sure it's it's really, if you're able to negotiate a computer and go to the website and follow the pages, it's not terribly fraught. It's not terribly difficult. It's just kind of not thinking it's a one size fits all. Every person who shows up in front of you is going to have a different situation. I will say that it's a little confusing. Someone who came to me had already done the application on their phone, but they clicked Lifeline instead of EBB, which is really easy to do. And by doing that, it locked them out of getting into the EBB portion of they couldn't go back. So I would, if anyone goes through that, I would caution to don't sign up for, I know you're eligible for both, but don't sign up for both. But it also came to light that if you are a Lifeline recipient, you're already qualified. So you can directly apply for, you actually have an ID number that you can give to Cox, and they can sign you up for EBB with that ID number. So in terms of training people, I really think, Linda and I, we talked about faith-based communities wanting to get trained and to get on. I'm not sure that they need specific training at this point. I think it's if you have patience and you're willing to walk through the application with someone. All I did, probably not real secure, but when I was doing it within this small setting, I took pictures with my I took pictures of my phone and I transferred them to my computer, and I showed them every time that I was deleting their private information. There's going to be different situations with that, but we got the information uploaded into the applications, and people walked away either with and expecting to get an email from the FCC or having already been approved. So that's how it's kind of working anecdotally.
So we're about out of time for this meeting. So obviously these are just a few of the many things that are happening around the state and people who are engaged. And, again, Tracy, thank you, and Cindy and your team and all who have really done a yeoman's work in trying to help get the information out and resources available and so forth. So really appreciate all the work you guys have done.
Steve,
somebody wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Steve, so this is Marcelino. I just wanted to share or say, our social media campaign is we want to try at least post something weekly on the EBB and related activities. And one of the things that we're working toward right now is trying to get the message out of the required documents for submitting the application. So you need to have documents, and we're still working on building that list of documents and then maybe categorizing it by providers. But it is certainly that's the priority is to hopefully soon get a message out to people about the documents that are required for submitting. We then, we'll follow up. Also, I think we talked about this in the past, Steve, with the social media, share information, because the Lifeline program is a longer term. And so we'll probably have, hey, EBB is a great thing, but, you could also qualify for Lifeline, or and many of these people also, again, they probably need a computer. So here are computer programs available to you, in your area. So, we're looking at the social media, emails, newsletters as an evolving process. And I think now is a good time to try and gather what documents people need to have ready.
Okay, thanks, Marcelino. So 2 more minutes. Any announcements? Anything coming up that people need to know about? And again, if you have things happening that you want to share, send them to me and I'll include them in our newsletter. And I can't emphasize enough, please go to that newsletter, because you'll find a lot of stuff that we've talked about today with the links and contacts and all that sort of stuff. So any announcements that we haven't talked about yet today?
I was just going to make a comment, Steve Henry here, about how long this program may last. I was just looking at the number of households. Like, there are 33 million households in the country that are eligible for Lifeline, and 9 million have signed up to Lifeline. And if you had 10 million households say that of those Lifeline households that signed up for EBB, that at $50 a month, that would use up 1.5 billion just for the internet access. And if they all took $100 for a computer as well or something, you'd use up that that money in about 3 months rather than the 10 months that Marcelino was talking about, if they're really effective at just signing up the Lifeline customers for EBB.
Yeah,
So-
that's one of the things that I did not include any $100 estimates in there. And I had, when we looked at the finding out who those people are within Lifeline is how do we get a message to them? And I never did get a response or answer to how, because they're the ones that obviously, I mean, they could immediately qualify for the program, but
Yeah, well, I know Mala said that she was going to look into how you get a list of the Lifeline customers in Arizona from the FCC, but I didn't hear, we haven't heard back from her on that, but I saw that there were 700,000 households eligible for Lifeline in Arizona and 200,000 households that had subscribed to it in Arizona.
yeah.
So-
And I used some of those estimates based on population and estimated about 33,000 just for Pima County. So, but you're right. There's some information that could help in figuring out or estimating better how long this program will last.
Right, but if they were really effective at reaching these households, it would go pretty quickly.
So that certainly continues to emphasize what we've talked about all along, is trying to get people in Arizona signed up as quickly as possible. So one last thing, Tracy Rexroad, I see you're still online. Can you summarize in 30 seconds or less the conversations that you and I had and what you needed?
I am. I know that connectivity is all over the place, thanks to a group like this. And one of the projects I'm working on is automated systems, automation with the new manufacturing coming in. And I'm trying to set up a group for automation. I work with career and technical education, and we're trying to get the kids that are learning automated systems in these jobs where they're problem solving, they're applying the programming and things like that. And if you know, or if you are involved with some of these companies, I'd really appreciate if you could help me out and maybe come up with groups that meet maybe quarterly to help make these connections, because there's people all over the state that are looking for the same thing.
Great, thanks, Tracy. So Kirk, I suggested that she might want to contact you, but I think we're way out of time. So again, Tracy, hopefully people will contact you. Again, you all know that anybody who's on this call, that your contact information will be in the minutes. That again, want to thank Oris and Henry, do a great job of summarizing our meetings and really appreciate that. The recordings also, I've been trying to get those posted so that if you miss the meeting or you want to go back and catch something, that the recordings are also available. With that, unless anybody has anything else, I think we're done for today. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks, all.
Steve. Great meeting, as usual. Good one.